There we go. Now it's live. Hi, this is Hyperwave. I'm Leah Wald here with Tyler Jenks. Today is March 21st, and we're going to talk about traditional markets. The Fed Powell announced that we're increasing interest rates, which we all expected. Dollar slipped a little, markets were happy and then became quite neutral. We're going to talk a little bit about gold. And then obviously Bitcoin price action in the market today. It did go up to 9,200, which is exciting, absolutely above the phase 3 line. However, we're really kind of sitting on the fence of things, hence Tyler's title today, which we already talked at length, and I was obnoxiously annoying about talking in Latin too much on the show. So I promise not to nerd out too much, and we'll hand you right over to you, Tyler.
Great. Thank you very much, Leah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to cover, too much stuff. And so we're just going to talk about a couple of things briefly and then get into a lot of detail on one thing specifically, which is this thing I call the Valley of Death, which comes, of course, from Charge of the Light Brigade by Alfred Lord Tennyson, where he's saying, into the Valley of Death rode the 600. And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, even before we had sold off and bounced off the phase 3 line of the hyperwave. But now we're climbing back a lot faster than most analysts thought we would. But we thought there was a good chance that this would be a pretty strong bounce. Now I want to take the other side a little bit and just tell everybody it's time to be a little cautious in your thinking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly go to screen share, and we are going to take a look at the same old chart, which is the Bitcoin chart with not a whole lot of lines on it, to first of all look at where we are. Back here is the first penetration of the phase 3 line, and this was the second one just 4 days ago, basically. And we've been climbing ever since. And today we were actually up very nicely over 9,200, slipped back and went negative down to 8,700. And now we're right in between, but slightly positive with only about an hour and a half to go. Well, let's see, 2.5 hours, I guess, to close the candle for the day. We're at 89.32 right now. So 4 days in a row of green action. The first 3 were very nice candles. This one's turning into a doji right here, but still right on the fence in terms of being positive or negative for the day. Now, as I said, I don't have any lines on this because I want to give you a little bigger perspective. Let's take it back to the top at 20,000 and the drop down back up, the big drop down back up, drop down back up. And this last one did not go as low as the deepest low. And my explanation for that is because the hyperwave line is at an angle. And therefore, you would expect if the phase 3 line is going to continue to hold, that it will keep doing so at higher and higher lows, which is a bullish signal as long as we can keep holding that hyperwave line. But now what I want to do is I want to show you this chart, because I've already drawn in what I call the Valley of Death, which is the area between the lower horizontal line at 10,100 and the upper line, which comes at about 12,800. And I just want everyone to understand that this is where we are, way down here. Yeah, we've had 4 good days and we've moved out of the danger zone, but we still haven't even reached this. Now, this is made up of a number of lines, and I'm quickly going to go through them. We've done this before, but I'd like everyone to get imprinted on their heads exactly what I'm talking about in terms of this overhead resistance. If we can get above these lines, particularly these 6 lines, and I'm going to add this downtrend line as a 7th. If we can get above these, then all of this will become support, a tremendous floor under the price. But we have not even begun burrowing into it at this point. So let's just take a look at what these lines are by getting a little bit better picture where we're seated right now. This lower line is a Fibonacci line that we also bounced off of, which is the retracement from the top at 61.8%. We are now above that, so we don't have to worry about that for now, and it will act as support if we drop back down. The next line is this descending line, which is the secondary drawing of the original trend line from the top into the first major correction, and then the third major correction until we broke out of it. And at that point, it looked like we were on our way to the upside. But then a funny thing happened when we ran into a couple of other areas of resistance. We were turned down, and now I'm drawing the original line through this point, the same way Tone has done and a number of other analysts. I don't believe that means the first line is invalid. It simply means we've got another line to contend with from the top, and we have not yet reached it as we're sitting here this afternoon. We've got to get back through that. That is coming in tomorrow, somewhere around 9,600. Then we begin what I believe are the most difficult areas that we've got to get through. This first line is the 10,100 horizontal trend line that I have been drawing for 4 months, and it continually repels price from the bottom and acts as support from the top. The next line up right here is the 50% retracement Fibonacci line. The next line up is my second horizontal trend line at 11,100 that I have also been drawing for the last 4 months. And I have paired that one up with the 10,100, and I've called everything in between 10,100 and 11,100 as a field. It isn't just that there are 2 lines, but there is a solid body connecting those 2 lines, which is a field that the price struggles to get through in both directions, up and down, and has over and over again, all the way back to before we ran up to the all-time highs. So to me, those are the most significant lines on this chart. And we are still a long ways away from getting through them. Once we do that, there are still 2 things we have to overcome. The next one is this 12,500 approximately top, as well as a 38.2% Fibonacci line. So if we can go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines, I think we're home free. There is another Fibonacci line, which is the 23.6. I don't think that will be any resistance. And then we're on our way back to the top. So my only point in showing you all of that is so you can keep in mind, they don't pop up out on a chart. You've got to sort of figure them all out, know that they're there, prove that they're there by a number of touches with price. But just know that when you take all these lines away and you're only looking at that chart, you get the feeling that, okay, the hyperwave line comes in down here, that's support. And now all we've got to do is we've got to break this downtrend and we're on our way. And what I just illustrated to you is that is not the case. I still believe we can do it. And I still believe we can do it rather rapidly, but we have to get there first. And that's what the last 4 days has been doing. Step by step, just one quick sec, step by step, we are moving up in a very controlled fashion, as opposed to spiking up into all that resistance and then getting turned down. So we're doing the right thing, but we're still far away. I'm sorry, Leah. I just wanted to finish that thought. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Can you bring up the RSI lines? I just thought it would be interesting to note. Sorry, I'm getting feedback here.
Yeah, what I will do is I will put up an RSI on this chart without any other lines, and then I will take a look at a weekly. And so this is the relative strength index against the entire hyperwave of Bitcoin, going back to when we were down at $500. So this is a 20x move, and this is what has happened to the RSI. It's gone up here to 87, gone up here to 77, gone up here as high as 90, gone up here as high as 80, over 80 again. And this last one was the biggest of all. At one point, it got up to about 92 intra-week, but posted right around the 90 level. Since then, since this peak, the RSI has come all the way down to mid-level 50s. That's only mid-level. You need to get down to 30 before you are oversold. So this entire pattern on a weekly basis has not been oversold. But let's take a look at a daily. The daily RSI dropped down to oversold territory when we dropped to 59.20. We came close last week when we dropped down to the hyperwave phase line 3 and dropped all the way down below 7,200, but we only got down to 33, not as low as we had been before. On this bounce, we're already back up to about 40 on a daily basis, about midway. We're certainly not overbought, but we never really reached an oversold area. But when we go to shorter time patterns, like the 6 hour, we were oversold off of this last bottom. We were oversold previous to that on 2 or 3 different occasions. So the shorter time frames were in a position to allow this bounce. So that's basically what relative strength shows you. Now, I did just want to go over one other thing, which is the overall pattern using our phase 2 and phase 3 lines. So this is the hyperwave of Bitcoin. This was the first break and the response up from it. This is the second break and now the response up from it. This is the original downtrend line that I had, and we have broken out of that original downtrend line. We have not yet on the newly constructed line through this peak here. That is coming up in about $200 or $300 from where we are. So on a big picture hyperwave, this is what we're looking at. A lot of reason to believe that this is going to be sustainable. But that's why I wanted to show you the chart of all the overhead resistance that doesn't show up on these kind of charts. It is there. It is real. We are still in a downtrend, but we are also in an uptrend, which is called phase 3. And the longer the line is, the more powerful it is relative to a shorter term line. So right now I'm leaning towards the side of us being able to continue to make progress upwards. And I just wanted to cover all of that today so that there was no confusion on what appears to be my enthusiasm on the tweets for the last 3 or 4 days. I'm very impressed with this 1 day bar that we had ending last night. And so far, we're holding on to all of that today. Those are all good signs. Leah, do you have any other questions about what we've talked about so far from anybody?
No, not yet. Guys,
Okay,
if you want any other questions, that'd be great. Tyler, switching to traditional markets, comments about the Fed today. I mean, we all expected it, but
right. To me, there's really no news with the Fed. It's just that Jay Powell, by going ahead and allowing this rate increase, is just going along with what Janet Yellen had laid out.
Tyler, you cut off there. Did we lose your mic? Maybe we lost his mic. Guys, if you have any questions, totally, as you guys know, I'm looking at the live chat, especially if you have questions about traditional markets, right? Tyler with Lucid is a money manager. Hence also why we're so excited about GBTC all the time. So traditional markets are in our wheelhouse, and we're going to start potentially doing bi-weekly vlogs about specifically traditional markets as well. So just letting you guys know that. Tyler?
Am I back?
You are back. Great.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, what I was basically saying is what happened with the Fed was not unexpected in one sense, but at the same time, by going ahead and raising interest rates and indicating there would be 3 increases this year instead of 4, which is what the market had been worried about. We had a little bit of activity in the stock market. We went up first, then came back and closed fairly flat. What did happen today is gold prices took off, because if the Fed is going to go slower in terms of raising interest rates, that's actually very positive for gold. And we actually had a short-term breakout in gold, and we will do an entire vlog on gold, interest rates, inflation, and the Federal Reserve. That'll be coming up shortly. I did also want to just say one other thing in terms of Consensio. We have been getting an awful lot of interest. We've done 2 brief Consensio vlogs talking about the moving averages and how they can be used for decision making across all markets, but particularly on things like Bitcoin and on hyperwaves right now. And my comment is that a lot of people have been trying to answer the puzzle: what happens when you add a third moving average along with price? What happens to the number of what we were calling them is sub conditions that occur or could possibly occur? And the guesses are ranging now, or the calculations, from about 250 up to about 650. So I don't mean to tease you, but everyone is still low. So just one quick comment about Consensio, and I'm going to attempt a screen share again, and hopefully we don't lose my mic. What I want to look at is I want to look quickly at the subconditions that we have looked at before. Can you still hear me?
I can, and also post Consensio, Tyler, if you can just quickly note your thoughts on the death cross. Bitcoin.
Sure. Okay. Here's why everybody is coming in low on the calculations. And it's a little unfair that I did this, but remember what we were looking at. We were looking at what is called a sine wave, which looks like this. I'm going to go back to the beginning. And because this is so perfect, going from a bull market to a bear market and back into a bull market, it's misleading on purpose, because the only way to grasp how these things work is to take a simple case, which is a sine wave. Go and look at 100 charts and you will never see this. You will see all kinds of things happening, and it's usually from the price side, where price will go way up above the moving averages and then crash through both of them, and then come back up again and go through all kinds of gyrations. You never see this kind of a perfect movement. So my clue to everybody is, don't assume that markets will always go from bull right into bear and back into bull. As you all know, we can go through long periods of time, such as in the phase one of a hyperwave that can last for years, where there is no trend in the market. There is sideways action in whatever you're looking at. And when there's sideways action, what that means is the sine wave that we are using as our template is not going to work. Therefore, go back to the 13 original sub conditions, A through M, and experiment with them first and see how many actual subconditions there are if you don't assume a perfect sine wave. If you assume that at various times price is going to do very strange things. And from that, I will give you the actual number of conditions in a simple example with 2 moving averages. And then I will also give you the number for all 3. But I'd like those that have been trying to just expand their thinking a little bit when making your calculations. And I think you'll see exactly why it is a lot more complex than we originally thought. Now, Leah asked if I would take a look at one other thing, which was
death cross.
The death cross. Now, We have already had a small example of a golden cross. Remember, what a death cross just means is the short term or intermediate term, a shorter moving average crossing down below a longer term moving average. That's what a death cross is. A gold cross or a golden cross is just the opposite. It's when in a down market, which we've had in Bitcoin for 4 months now, in a down market, what happens is the short-term moving average begins moving up because price is moving up, and you start crossing the intermediate or longer term moving averages. And we've just had that. We've just had a positive golden cross on a short-term time frame. So I'm going back one more time to screen share. I'm going to pull up the Bitcoin chart. I'm going to look at some moving averages. And I will explain what I mean. Here are 3 moving averages of Bitcoin. There's no prices here because I love looking at consensio type of analysis without the prices. Let me put the prices in. There are your Bitcoin prices right up through today. Here is a golden cross. Why? Because this short-term moving average, which is always at the bottom of the 3 moving averages or 2 moving averages in a bear market, has been influenced higher by this price action off the bottom, so that it has turned the short-term moving average up. And on a 4-hour basis, 1 day ago, 24 hours, 6 4-hour candles ago, we actually crossed. Now, that's a very small victory, but I wanted it to illustrate that this was a death cross. This is where the intermediate term of 3 moving averages, in this case a 52 period moving average, crossed below the 200. We've already had a death cross. But that's on a 4-hour basis. When people are saying death cross today, they're talking long term. So let's take a look at the daily. This is a daily. I'm going to get rid of the price because we all know we're looking at Bitcoin. And now here is the bull market in Bitcoin with the short-term moving average moving up, the intermediate term moving average moving up, and the long-term average moving up, and the short-term moving average above the intermediate and the intermediate above the long-term. That is a bull market. This is a death cross. The short-term moving average just broke through the intermediate term moving average. That is a death cross by definition.
Tyler.
Yes, please.
Quickly, just for the audience, mention the time scale of those moving averages.
Right. These are 14, 52, and 200 period moving averages. So we're now looking at a daily chart. So that would be 14 days, 52 days, and 200 days, which is sort of standard in the industry for people to use. In Hyperwave, we use weekly charts. Therefore, that's what the 3 moving averages look like on a weekly basis. But remember what we're looking at now. This is a 200-week moving average, or almost 4 years. This is a 52-week moving average, or 1 year. And this is a 14-week moving average. And the only thing that's happened on this longer term, when you put the price back in to make sure that I'm not cheating and looking at a different chart, there is the entire hyperwave. Get rid of the price again so we can focus on this consensio concept. And the only thing that's occurred is a downturn in the short-term moving average on a weekly basis. We still have the long-term moving up, we still have the intermediate term moving up, and we have the short-term having turned down. Back to the daily, because that's what most people think of when talking about death crosses. On the daily, we had the short term cutting through the intermediate term, but notice that it wasn't on this first big drop down to 5,920 on Bitcoin. We did not have the intermediate term cross the long term. In fact, the intermediate term on the next bounce gave us a golden cross back above the short term, but then dropped back below it and then broke below both of the other moving averages. That is a real daily death cross, and it has not ended yet until this short term can be turned around back to the upside. That's what our price is trying to do right now. The price over the last 4 trading sessions has been coming up to the short-term moving average, closed above it yesterday, and stayed above it today. What that will do is it will flatten this moving average out. And if we can go up a little bit higher, it will actually turn this up. And the short term will give us a golden cross above both of these two. That's not what people are talking about. What people are talking about when they're talking about a death cross are these two lines. And to make this clearer, I'm going to first of all take out price once again, and now I'm going to take out one of the moving averages, which is the short term. I'm going to remove that, and so all we're going to look at now is the 52 and the 200 week. What people are talking about a death cross now are these two lines, which is a 52-day on this chart and a 200-day. They have not yet crossed, but many analysts believe these are the two significant ones, and the 1-day period is a significant period with approximately a 50 or 52 day period and a 200. They have not crossed. The only way they will not cross is if price gets above them both. It will then first flatten out the intermediate term, and at some point it will accelerate the long term, but that's many days in the future. So the question is, are we going to have a death cross? It sure looks like it. But remember all of the caveats I just put in. It depends on which lines you're talking about and over what time periods. But on this popular one, we're getting very, very close. Tone Vase has been talking about it because he's very nervous the price is going to come up and get turned down right at the point of this death cross. And what he's talking about, putting the price back in, you can see how close we are to that right now. We're only days away from the two of them crossing. I'm not going to guess. There's just no reason to do that because the evidence changes with every tick and with every day that goes by. We've been getting closer and closer to breaking through this. My best interpretation of everything we've just talked about is that because this long phase 3 line in Hyperwave has held once again, it has shifted the probabilities that we are going to break through both of these lines, and we are going to enter the valley of death between 10,100 and 12,500, and we are going to break through them and thus go higher. But I wanted to start this whole thing off by showing you how difficult that is going to be. So I'm not saying it's a 90-10 type of probability. I'm looking at a 55-45 at best, and I'm placing a lot of emphasis on the power and resilience of the hyperwave phase lines. So more than everybody wanted to hear, but I think this is an important time to talk about those things. And with that, I'm going to go back to Leah and see if she has anything else that we want to talk about.
Well, charge of the light brigade, right? Into the valley of death, rode the 600, if I remember that correctly.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Nothing else to talk about, guys. I was noticing your questions. Thanks so much. And I guess just have a great day. Hope that regarding our light brigade, we continue to get buyers and things are looking better. So hopefully this is a good week. Thanks, Tyler.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Leah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.